What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Hawk Talk on Melrose coming at you a couple days after Iowa's 26-0. Not very surprising loss to Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. And we now know who are playing the bowl game. So we got a lot to talk about today. I got Tyler here as always. What's going on, man? How is your Monday? We're recording this on Monday night. A little bit. This isn't usually a planned episode. We usually do it Sundays and Wednesdays, but we had to make things work. So what's going on, man?
Yeah, what's going on? Like you said, we had to do it tonight. Someone was a little tired after their partying down in Indianapolis. Mr. Collin was at the game, as you would know if you listened to the last episode, and excited to kind of get your thoughts on just kind of your overall experience there. And
Yep.
I know obviously the game didn't go the way we wanted, but still probably a really good time, and definitely jealous of that aspect of it. But yeah, excited to dive into it. Excited to talk a little bit about the official final playoff rankings as well. Maybe we'll touch on that at the end too. So a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. Indy was a blast. I think that's, going into it, we kind of figured that's the reason why we ended up going, because we kind of knew what the outcome was probably going to be.
Yeah.
And we talked about that in the last episode. As fans, deep down, you're hoping, you're hopeful, you're positive, but you kind of know it's probably going to be a very, very tough challenge to walk away with a W, and especially with how challenged our offense actually is. So, let's get right into it. Kind of before I begin, I do want to make it clear to people, like, this year, it ended up being a pretty good year. I don't want to complain too much. Winning 10 games, I get it. The schedule was pretty easy. The Big Ten West was horrible. That wasn't Iowa's fault. We don't schedule the games. We don't make other teams bad. Like, it's who we play. We play who we play. And we know we took care of business, getting the 10 wins and going to the Big Ten championship game and at least competing in that game despite all the injuries. And we've talked about this for probably every episode of how good of a job, Kirk and Co has done with this team with all the injuries. Like, if you would have told me before the year that our starting quarterback, who we were all really high on, gets hurt at the beginning of the fifth game of the year, out for the year, if you would have told me our best two offensive weapons, two NFL caliber tight ends get hurt, one after the third game, and then the other one midway through the season. And then if you would have told me our best overall player gets hurt, now, yes, he played majority of the season, but gets hurt the final two games, doesn't play the final two games, nor the Big Ten championship game or the bowl game, I would have said, well, man, like, what this year ends up being really bad, or it's going to end up being really bad. Maybe 7 wins, 8 if we're lucky. And so to get to 10 wins, it's been a pretty good year. With all that being said, though, man, like, walking out of Lucas Oil Stadium on Saturday, it really sucks watching how elite our defense is, and it's legitly a championship level defense.
Yeah.
And it just sucks knowing that, hey, we are so close to being, I wouldn't say like a national title contender, but at least up there with this defense. If we just had a okay offense, but we are so far from there because of the offense. And it is just so frustrating that Kirk can sit there and just, it's okay. And I just don't get that. I don't get how he can sit there and not see, man, like, with this defense, like, what we can do if we just had a decent offense. And the fact that he's just like okay with that. Complimentary football, I don't see where it's complimentary football. How is it complimentary football if the offense can't even get in the red zone or even set up a good drive or get first downs? You're pinning all that on the defense. And man, like I said, Saturday defense showed up. 3.3 yards per play of offense from Michigan, which was the worst offensive performance in the Jim Harbaugh era at Michigan. We just played the number 1 team in the country, and we balled out on defense.
Yeah.
So if we can, we could compete with the big boys defensively. It's just our offense. It is. I've said this, rock bottom, but it's like getting further and further away. Now, injuries has a little bit to do with it, But even if we weren't injured, the offense still wouldn't be that great.
Right.
Things need to change. Kirk needs to just swallow his pride and figure something out, because it's starting to get very frustrating how we're wasting all these years. We're wasting this talent defensively. Last 3 years, man, like what it could be if we just had an okay offense. Our defense last year was really good, and we thought going into this year there was going to be a drop-off, and I really haven't seen that big of a drop-off. It's been about the same, despite Cooper getting hurt, despite Noah Shannon not playing one single snap. So it's just it sucks. That's my first initial thoughts. You can have the floor now.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree on really everything that you kind of just laid out there, Collin. I don't want to take. I'm the same with you. I don't want to take away from what was a really, really good season for Iowa. Going 10-2 for Iowa is pretty damn good. And you mentioned it. A lot of it has to do with our opponents, but it's not Iowa's fault that they're in the West Division, right? Like you play who is on your schedule, and it's your job to beat those teams, no matter who they are. And Iowa found a way this year, despite, like you said, all really key injuries to key positions, namely mostly on offense, and then our overall best player. Like you tell me that going in to play the number 1 team in the country, number 2 team at the time, Michigan. What am I supposed to say? Like you said, we were optimistic, we were positive, but we knew that we were going to lose. We just didn't really know by how much. And you kind of hit the nail on the head, man. And I've told you this, and I've said it on this podcast. We've talked about it kind of off the pod so many times. A game like this against a really, really good team, it only magnifies, or not magnifies, that isn't the right word. It enhances the problems at hand. Like we look way, way worse against these teams because these are problems that had been happening all year, but you get away with it against a team like Illinois, Nebraska, Northwestern. We told you, we're not getting away with it against Michigan. We didn't get away with it against Penn State either. And look at the 31-0 score there. So it just seems like when we get into these big games, these Big Ten championships, and I know in 2015 it was close and that game was awesome. But you go back to just a few years ago when we were there too, like against Michigan. You know, we've seen this story before, and it's like, man, I don't want to get embarrassed like I see that we do with this offense. Like you mentioned, defense. They're the number 4 defense in the country. And yet we have the worst offense in the country. Why is the gap so wide? Offense compared to defense. Clearly something isn't working. And like you said, essentially, I don't think Kirk loves it that we have a terrible offense, but clearly it's not that big of enough problem if he wasn't really willing to make a change.
Yeah.
Right. So, you kind of hit it there. It's like, you gotta change. And, I want to be more competitive in these big games is kind of the overall point that I'm trying to make here. I know I'm kind of going around in circles with it, but it is frustrating because you watch this and it's like, we're right there. We made Michigan look not like Michigan at all. And that game, if our offense isn't so inept, I really think that that's a more competitive game.
Think about it. Their only touchdowns came from just us being stupid, the special teams error, which that usually never happens for Iowa. And you can make the case if Cooper DeJean was out there, that doesn't happen because Cooper's so good.
He does play punt. Yeah.
Yep. And so that probably doesn't happen, but they get the ball at like the 5-yard line and the 6-yard line, easily score, which, you're going, when you get the ball at the 5-yard line, you're going to score. And then their other touchdown was which we can talk about that, the horrible penalty, or not the penalty, the turnover, which they called, so stupid, but still, he still turned the ball over, something that Deacon Hill has just been horrible at this year.
We said he was probably going to turn it over. We just didn't know how many times. So
that happened, and then they get the ball once again at like the 5 or 6 yard line. So their only touchdowns came from getting the ball at the 5 or 6 yard line. And other than that, it was all field goals. It was all Their best drive outside of their first drive. So their first drive, which was scripted, you kind of figured that they were in with Iowa's defense. It seems like it happens a lot.
With scripted plays.
Before, which they ended up only with a field goal, bend but don't break.
Right.
After that, their best drive was 28 yards. So it's like, and while we're at it, I'm just going to look at the stats here. I mean, they were 3 for 15 on third down, 213 total yards. It is incredible, and you look at this and you're like, with all that being said, like if you would have told me that on Wednesday that happens, I still say, well, our offense is so bad, we probably lose. But like you're talking a very, very close game. But the problem is
lose by 13, something like that.
Our offense is so bad. And then not only that, but we had 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
And it just sucks because it pains me because we actually played Michigan pretty competitive. And for people that didn't watch the game, which I'm sure there was probably a decent amount, because I think most people kind of just figured Michigan would beat Iowa pretty handily. They look at the score and it's like, yep, see, Iowa gets embarrassed. And really, yes, offensively we did, but this game was a lot closer than what the final score was. And if we just had somewhat of any pulse on offense, this game is a very, very close game. I'm not saying we win, but it's a very close game. And what, to your point before, it sucks because back in the day, we used to be competitive against these big boys. And when I'm talking big boys, like I'm talking the Michigans, Ohio States, the Penn States, we used to be competitive. Hell, we would win a lot of those games. And ever since the Penn State game, ever since that game back in 2021, it was almost like someone struck a deal that, hey, if we at least win this game, the next 5 years, you're going to suck against ranked teams. I don't get it because ever since that game, it has been horrible. We have been embarrassed, and it's mainly because of the offense. It's mainly because the offense is just continually getting worse. And Kirk just, like I said, decides not to do anything about it. 2021, after that season, you can make the case that, it was 1 year, so maybe whatever. But after last year, it was like, okay, this is enough's enough. What does he do? He doubles down again going into this year, and we'll see what happens after this year. But David Eichholt tweeted, I think this was after the game on Saturday, in Iowa's last 7 games against ranked teams, Iowa's averaged only 9 points. So that is absolutely horrible. And how Kirk, once again, can't just see that and see, okay, there is a problem. There is something we need to do. And what I'm about ready to say, like, I know Kirk wants to win. Like, that's obviously what he wants to do. But sometimes when, like, he doesn't want to change on offense, or he's like, it's just like, let's just keep doing what we're doing, it makes me really wonder if, like, trying to make it to the playoffs, trying to be a national title contender, is that really what he's striving to be? Because if it was, he would have done something by now. He would have changed things. He would be willing to figure some things out. Now, like I said, I know he wants to win, but sometimes it really makes me wonder, like, what is his, like, is it really that big of a priority for him? Because I feel like if it would be, because we are so damn close with our defense and with our special teams.
Yeah.
And
it's a valid question.
We always say, so right now we are the worst offense in college football, like 131st in the nation. I really think if we just got to like 80th, we'd be good. And
that's an increase of 50 spots. I mean, yes. I agree.
Everyone's probably thinking like, oh, we got to get to like the top 25. No, we don't. Not with this defense special teams.
No.
If we got to 80th, we'd be fine.
Can we score like 2 touchdowns?
Yeah.
Seriously. That's what we're asking at this point from the offense. I genuinely think if we could score 2 touchdowns on average with like a field goal or 2, I don't see how we don't win 10 games every season, right? With this level of defense and special teams that we have.
So Chris Hassel also tweeted, Iowa hasn't been shut out since 2000 until this season. It happened in the only 2 games Iowa played a ranked team, 31-0 at Penn State, 26-0 versus Michigan.
Yeah. And
then he put, I don't want to hear about a 10-win season, at least attempt to fix the offense. This isn't acceptable. It's pathetic. And someone tweeted back, didn't they fire their OC? What are you talking about? At least attempt to fix the offense. And Chris Hassel says, I'm talking about Kirk Ferentz. He has to be the one to attempt to fix it. Bethan, the president, can only do so much, and I completely agree with him.
That's what we've been saying on here. Yep.
Kirk, I just don't know, like, how many games does it take for him to realize, like, man,
I don't know.
yeah, this isn't working. This offense is horrible.
Yeah.
Things need to change. And
Just
I mentioned it to you yesterday. It's got to the point where it's almost like he doesn't even like care about the offense. Like, hey, as long as like the defense and special teams, like he never takes any chances on
yeah.
offense. He's never like,
Yeah.
it's always about the defense and special teams. And I just don't get that. I don't get that type of style. I really don't.
Yeah, it's almost like he's doubled down on it, and it's like, with, like you said, the conservative philosophy that he plays with puts all the pressure on the defense to make the plays necessary, and then hopes the offense can, like what we've been doing as of late in the fourth quarter, find a way to win. And that is not that's a recipe to go 8-4. That's a recipe to go 7-5. That's not a recipe. And this year 10-2, because obviously our schedule really was pretty damn easy. So, and that's just proof, because look what we did. We found a way to win against every team except the two tough teams on the schedule.
Yep.
Which Penn State, and then in the Big Ten Championship, Michigan. And we look very, very bad offensively. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it too, but this defense, I mean, played freaking lights out. They're going to get, and then there's just nothing to show for it. I mean, right? Like I'm glad if you said, if you actually watched the game, and you were there, so you didn't listen to it, but I was telling you, like, Joel Klatt was actually like really giving Iowa's defense a lot of props throughout the game, and then obviously throughout the season, and individual players too, and like Jay Higgins, just such a stud, Sebastian Castro, and like, I'm glad that they at least recognize that aspect, because I don't want, like you said, that to get lost, because for as much as they mean to like Iowa football, like the defense as a whole, like, yeah, they deserve all the credit.
So, I think another problem with this offense, and we talked about it, is Deacon Hill obviously is a horrible freaking quarterback, like absolutely horrible. Obviously, if we had a healthy Cade, it would probably look a little bit better. Like, let's be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
But this is another problem I have with Ferentz, is he keeps like double downing on Deacon Hill. And I don't understand, because you look at the Nebraska game, the kicker was doing horrible. What does he do at the end of the game? He puts in a new kicker. Yeah. So why have we not tried a new quarterback out there? Why does he keep bringing in Deacon Hill? And I'm going to share the screen here. You probably saw this on Twitter today. John Miller put this out. Look at this quarterback play. Look at where Deacon Hill is, all the way to the bottom.
This. Oh my God.
It's like not even like he is so far down. It is unreal. And this is what John Miller said.
He's the worst quarterback in Power 5.
Pretty much.
By a mile. Yeah.
So like pretty much what John Miller said, it was like, okay, so Kirk Ferentz keeps saying how he's the best chance for Iowa to succeed at that position. And like John Miller said on the right, okay, then Iowa's evaluation development of quarterbacks needs to complete in total overall. And I completely agree. I mean, that is it. You cannot tell me that he
right here. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, this is factual information. This is pen to paper, right? Like, this is showing you have not only the worst quarterback, but the next best quarterback's quite a bit up the scale there. Dante Moore for UCLA. Like, Deacon Hill is the worst Power 5 quarterback I've maybe ever seen. And like, I always make the joke, but it's honestly true. It's like, man, we didn't realize how good we had it with Spencer Petras. Because
or with Nate Stanley.
I never thought or Nate Stanley.
Yeah.
But like, I always hated Spencer Petras, but I think we've said it multiple times. We'd take him back in a heartbeat if we knew it was going to be him or Deacon Hill.
Yeah. On that chart there, you saw Heinrich Harburg for Nebraska, and he was horrible this year, and he was like horrible, steps ahead of Deacon. So that just goes to show how bad Deacon is. The problem with Deacon, where we sat at, normally, like when we go to Iowa games, like we're not as high up as where we were at. We were like a bird's eye view. And like, there were so many times, I told you this yesterday, Caleb Brown was wide open. And I don't know if they showed it on TV, but he was getting pretty pissed out there. Like his body language, like,
I didn't see much of it when you were saying that. Yeah.
Like there were so many plays where he was beating his guy, and Deacon he just goes to one guy. And this has been really the problem with Iowa quarterbacks as of late. And I think it boils down to it's because Brian Ferentz, the quarterback's coach. I mean, we're not getting any sort of improvement. I mean, and Deacon's probably just bad at this anyways, at reading progressions. But like I said, I mean, Spencer Petras was bad at it. It seems like we get locked on to one guy only. Another thing, with their bird's eye view, I really watched it this game. The route trees are absolutely horrible for Iowa. It's just so much horizontal, not much vertical. It's 3rd and 10. We do a 4-yard out. It makes zero sense. We do a lot of tight end and wide receiver screens. Now, I think the reason why we do a lot of that is because they know Deacon Hill's inability. But, I mean, oh my gosh, we're 22.5-point underdogs. That 3rd and 12 when we did a end around to Caleb Brown on 3rd and 12. It's what are we doing here? What are we doing? Take a shot, man. We have nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
I thought Brian Ferentz's play calling was really, really bad. Now, the execution was bad, but the play calling this last game was horrible. It was almost kind of like a giant FU to the fan base, because I really thought going in this game, he was going to kind of coach loose, right? It's your second to last game. You have everybody's calling you out. Everybody's not even giving you a chance. I really thought he would actually maybe be a little aggressive, and it was opposite of that. So glad he's done. Now, once again, until I see it, this offense is going to probably be about the same, even with the new OC. But I'm glad he's done, because I think it's proven that he's just not a play caller. He's just not a good offensive coordinator. He needs and he thrives at being a position coach, specifically offensive line. That's something that honestly should have always been the case. Kirk should have never made him OC. And I think Saturday really proved it. The game plan was horrible. I mean, I get it. The injuries, it's hard to draw up game plans when you just don't really have many good guys out there. I understand that, but I don't get what we were doing on Saturday. It was so weird. And then that 3rd and 2 with the fumble, the Jazz, why are we doing that play call where it was a halfback, block, and then it was a screen play?
Blocked and released, or did a screen.
I don't understand it. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, I think I was texting you during the game, and then obviously talked after, and I was so infuriated with how conservative we were to be 22-point underdogs. Go out there. You have literally nothing to lose. Who cares if you lose by 30 or 26? Yeah. Just attempt some deep balls. If you get picked, it's a punt. We were going to punt anyway.
Yep.
I
think I told you
or go ahead.
Well, I told you yesterday, that one throw that we had to Deontay Vines. Now, granted, he didn't catch it, but that was a 20-yard, decent throw by Deacon. That was why did we not do that more often on Saturday? I know he didn't catch it, but he should have caught it. It was a decently well-thrown ball.
Yep. Yeah, and you said there was times where you thought Caleb Brown was open for deeper routes, and he was getting frustrated. So obviously that's more on Deacon not finding it than it is Brian not, because he did call the play call. But there was plenty of times I thought too where Brian just, like you said, end around on 3rd and 12. What the hell are we doing? That is just so infuriating. You give yourself zero shot. And again, is that Kirk in his ear saying, hey, run the ball here? Maybe. I don't know. I think it goes hand in hand, like you were saying. I think Brian is a terrible play caller, but the buck stops with Kirk, and I think he has the final say on a lot of decisions on 3rd downs, and run more than we're gonna pass. I just, is it ever going to change? I don't know, but that was very frustrating. And to see us not only with such a slow start, but I mean, to score 0 points is wow. I know, it's just tough.
So going back to Caleb Brown too, when I mean, he was getting open downfield, I wasn't I'm not really referring he was running go routes, but post routes, the dig routes where it was maybe a 10-yard in, those were the plays that he was getting open. And
Which also begs the question, why is Deacon not like, if he's going to lock it on a receiver, why is it not Caleb Brown, the best player, the guy that gives you the best chance at wide receiver to catch the ball? Especially like you said, if he's actually open, it's like, dude, what are we doing? He's so bad.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's very frustrating. And the one positive with this offense the last few weeks, I'm just glad we finally started getting the ball more to Caleb.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I really am confident that he's gonna stay. I haven't heard anything, but I wouldn't. I mean, I think you'd have to sit out a year because he already transferred once, so that probably helps us. But I think the last couple of weeks show like, hey, you're probably and really this is going to be the case moving forward. You're going to be like our primary wide receiver, and so I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting this next month. I'm sure Kirk will wait till after the bowl game, which I don't really necessarily agree on, but who's going to be the next OC? What's he going to do? Is Kirk finally going to let whoever the next OC be to kind of do their thing, kind of give them the keys, kind of like he does with the defense? Like it's going to be very interesting. I really believe that he needs to come out and just admit that things are not right and things need to change. I think that's like your number one thing. And then I think whoever the next OC is, whether it is John Boudmeyer, whether it is someone, Paul Chris, or whoever it is, you got to let them do their own thing. You have to. This philosophy, this system, everything it's so bad. It's so outdated. Let them do their own thing. Now, once again, I don't want to go to a spread air raid with this type. I was not built like that. I want to continue doing this pro style. But once again, it needs to be modern. It needs to be more 21st century like. It needs to be like when you're watching NFL games on Sunday, some of those teams. This is like horrible. This is like 1980s, 1990s. It's not fun. It's not a fun brand of football.
Exactly.
And like John Miller says it all the time, like football is, you're supposed to be entertained by it. Yes, wins are great and wins a win, right? But that's like the reason why you go to games. You travel, like for me, I travel 5 hours to go to every home game, or I take 3 hours of my Saturday to watch these games on TV because I want to be entertained.
Yeah.
Now I want to win as well, but it does. After a while, it starts getting old. These just games where it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a slow death, and it really is unfortunate. And then yes, when we start playing, we play a really good team, and then this is what happens. It's like every single time. I want to get to the point where it's like I feel confident. I feel like, hey, we have a chance. Once again, going into this last game, we were, as fans, we're hoping like, hey, you never know. But I think we all knew like the outcome was going to be probably not very good. And it's because of this offense. It's because of Kirk's unwillingness to change things. So it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, we'll have plenty of time to go over what needs to happen on offense. We'll, plenty of episodes to dive into this offense. So I'm just going to leave that. I'm just very intrigued as what's going to happen.
Yeah, to put a kind of a final cap on it, to kind of reiterate what I was saying before, and you touched on it. It's like, the winning is the most important thing. Obviously, I want to win as many games as possible. That is the ultimate goal. However, you got to get it done, right? And I, to an extent, I agree with that, because a win is a win. But at a certain point, as fans, it's like, man, to be competitive in some of these games that actually are meaningful games, like, I don't know, a Big Ten championship, things need to change on offense. So I know there's fans out there, and I know there's people out there that are like, and even Kirk, like, to an extent, it's like they just don't really, like, they're fine with it. And it's like, how can you go to these games or watch these games and be okay with what you saw on Saturday, especially with how good the defense played?
Yep.
If the defense is so good and we hold them to such a high standard, why can't we do that for the offense? That's, I guess, my question. So I
exactly. Exactly. And it just goes to like, with like, why does Kirk allow Phil to do its own thing? And really,
why is the defense held to that high standard of number 4 team in the country? The points per game is very minimal. Like, just all the stats are amazing. Defensive players left and right, winning awards here and there. And our offense is literally the exact opposite. At the farthest end of the spectrum, we are dead last, and no recognition for any offensive players because the scheme and it's so outdated.
Like, Kirk, it's okay to, like, yeah, if you want to continue being a run first offense,
Sure.
be a team where it's like, hey, we're gonna beat you by not turning the ball over, not being as
Michigan
aggressive. I'm
does a
okay
lot
with
of,
that.
and Michigan does a lot of similar things. They're a run heavy team. They're a run first team, but they've modernized. They
Yep.
they've they can go to the shotgun. They can throw the ball when they need to throw the ball down the field.
Yeah.
Like,
Because if you really think
yeah,
about it, those first couple of years at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, it really wasn't that great
right.
offensively, remember? And then they kind of like I know he's like fired one of the OCs, they brought someone new in, and like they really kind of these last few
Yeah,
years, kind of like in your point to like Alabama, you brought up Alabama in the past too. So
right.
yeah, no, it's
Modernize it.
just
You just got to modernize.
it's
You're
like
right.
Kirk,
You're
you
right.
just gotta swallow your damn pride. You gotta, he's just such an. I just feel like he's at to the point where he's like in such denial, and like obviously as you get older, it gets worse and worse. You're stubborn, and it's just like, man, like Kirk, you only have a few more years left. Like it could be a great final few years if you just
It could.
let the new OC do its thing, and you just
Yep.
be the CEO. Just be the CEO. Let the
Could
defense
you
coordinator do its
imagine
own thing. Let the OC do
we
its own thing.
we get Paul Christ and Kirk says, "Okay, Paul, you've shown that you've been successful in the past. This is your offense. Do your thing." Like,
Yep,
I know you cannot tell me we wouldn't be in that 80 range minimum.
exactly. I
Minimum.
want to keep the same foundation on offense, but I really want wherever their playbook is at, all the playbooks, I want to be thrown in the trash and just start anew with a new OC like that because
Yes.
the system, the route trees, everything. And from what I've heard is it's so complex that it takes a few years to learn. I don't understand how that's even the case because if that was the case, then you would think this offense would be really good. So it's time for a change. So
Even if it takes real quick, and even if it takes a down year for it to get better, I mean, you saw it with Wisconsin this year. Like, I'm okay with it. To
yeah,
know that the future is bright and to know that down the road we'll get to a place
try
where
to
I
get
think
to a point. Yep.
right. I'm happy with that.
So as we flip to the college football playoffs, I do want to take the time or take just real quick with Iowa obviously going to the Citrus Bowl. It's a good bowl game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably I wouldn't even say probably it is. It's the best non New Year's Six bowl that you can get. It's time slotted great on New Year's right before the college football playoffs this year on ABC. You're playing the top SEC team that doesn't go to the college football playoff for the New Year's Six Bowl. So you're going to get a quality opponent. So it's a great bowl game, and I'm excited for it. I really am. I think for the most part, it sounds like Iowa's not going to have many opt outs, which is great. It's a good way to kind of end the season. It would be huge if we could somehow find a way to win. But yeah, looking forward to that. But yeah, college football playoffs. And let's just talk about it real quick because it is very interesting what happened yesterday, and we all kind of knew it was probably going to be a little chaotic, and it definitely was. And it's all it's set now: Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama, and so Florida State gets left out. For me, it comes down to as a fan, as someone that is going to be tuning in on January 1st and excited. I'm happy with the four, but at the same time, like I don't know, like. I think Florida State deserved it. If you go undefeated, you're a Power 5 conference. You scheduled a really good non-conference game in LSU and won. Like, I think you deserve to be in it. I think like that gets you in. You look at a couple years ago, Cincinnati, they were undefeated, group of 5, and they got in. And you could make the case like, do they deserve with their schedule? And they got in. So I get it. Like, they're not clearly as good now with their backup quarterback. I understand that. But I just know, like, if that's happened to Iowa, like, I would be so frustrated. I'd be so pissed. So, but once again, I have no connections with Florida State. And as a fan who's going to watch the games deep down, like, I'm happy because I'd rather see a Michigan, Alabama than a Michigan with the backup quarterback, Florida State. It just is what it is. So, but yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
The exact same as you. I mean, we've talked about it already because you were on your way home, but I was watching it, and man, first initial reaction, yes, as a fan, as a non-supporter of any of those top teams, I think matchup wise, it's the best you could have gotten. But man, I watched those games this weekend, and when I saw Alabama beat Georgia, I'm like, well, here's where all hell breaks loose. Because I kind of thought Georgia wasn't in at that point, But I'm
Yeah.
like, well, it's really going to come down to Alabama, and if Florida State were to win, at the time I didn't know because that was like the late game along with Iowa. It's like, yeah, it's going to come down to those two teams, and as a fan, I agree 100%. I think that's probably the best matchups that you can ask for. But as a Florida State fan and as an Iowa fan, looking through this whole thing through the lens of an Iowa fan, man, Florida State got hosed. I Florida State should have been the third or fourth team. They won all their games. They are a undefeated Power 5 conference champion. And to use the subjectiveness of your quarterback is injured, so your offense doesn't look as good as a reason to keep them out. Like, then you're almost saying like, well, now your games don't even matter, because if your quarterback goes down, even if you win all your games, whoever it is come next year, you're still not in. Like, Florida State's head coach came out and said, like, what am I supposed to do? Tell our guys to just, you can quit playing now because Jordan Travis got hurt. They're like, don't worry about these last couple games. You're not getting in anyway. Like that. I mean, bro, that's tough. That's so tough. And you saw the reaction. I don't know if you saw the live reaction from Florida State fans, or their team, and obviously their fans, like, deservedly. I totally understand why you're pissed, because you went undefeated, man. You should have been in.
And it's not like Alabama was like a dominant team this year. It took
the
a
SEC
miracle.
Was not dominant.
Yeah, miracle fourth down play to beat an Auburn team who lost to New Mexico State at home
by 20.
So it's not like Alabama was like, oh my God, this is like, but I mean, they're still good, obviously. But yes, the SEC in general was kind of down. And I just think, like, once again, if you go undefeated, because what other sport, there's no other sport where if you go undefeated, you don't make the playoffs. Like, that's where it's like, I can see why because like I know there are people out there that don't like college football mainly because of like the postseason. I totally respect that, because if you really think about it, it is very stupid the way, I mean, who in their right mind even thought like a 14 playoff? I mean, what other sport does a 14 playoff? Like, it's so dumb. Like, it needs to be more. I think 12 is good. I still don't even think 12 is like, I would love to see a 16 or 24, kind of like what the FCS does. They do a 24 team playoff. So essentially at that point, you're the top 25 teams, obviously minus one would make it. And like that would be great. Like, that would be fun. Your entire month of December would be college football playoffs, which you can't tell me that wouldn't be good. So essentially you have a month of college football playoffs and a month of NFL playoffs. I would take that in a heartbeat. I'm obviously happy they're going to a 12-team playoff. I mean, like, it's better than 4. Obviously, with this year, it would have it wouldn't be any question right now. I still think like next year there's still going to be a little bit of drama with the 12-team playoff, because obviously the 12 and 13, but then you're still going to want to be the top 4 teams because you get a bye, and dude, that's so big to get a bye week. So like, there's still going to be like drama involved, but it won't be like this year, because like this, if it would have happened this year, Florida State would have been in, like all these teams would have been in that are that should be in, and things like that. So it's absolutely crazy. And
it's the only thing I'll say, and to kind of end what I was saying before, is like, it's almost, and I've heard this before, it's almost like it's like figure skating or like a beauty contest. You're judging them based off of like how they did. Like, it should come down. That's very subjective. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, their offense isn't very good now, so they're not in, even though they won all their games. Like, this is football. Like, the games should matter. The games have to matter. Otherwise, why are we even scheduling all these? Why would Florida State from now on even schedule LSU? They beat them and they went undefeated and they're still not in. Like, that's so weird to me. And that's where it just gets kind of like, Florida State should have been in. But as a fan, I would agree. I think Alabama is peaking at the right time more than ever compared to Florida State. But because I look at it like with Iowa. Iowa had a backup quarterback this year. Imagine if we would have won all our games with Deacon Hill. Wasn't going to be pretty, obviously. We're not going to blow teams out. We're finding ways to win. We, as Iowa fans, would be so pissed off today if we were in the same position. So that's where I have to kind of say that Florida State should have been. But
and like even like with the 14 playoff, I'm not saying that this team should be in, but like think about like Ohio State, for example. Like they were like obviously their only loss was on the road at Michigan. Every other, I mean, they've had ranked wins this year. Like
Notre
even
Dame.
them, yeah, it's like it just that's why we need to get to 12 teams at least, because some of these teams deserve to still. I mean, or look at Georgia, right? Like yeah, they lost, but it's like they still probably deserve to be in the playoffs if you really think about it.
For sure.
Like if this was a 12-team playoff this year, really the only drama you would have had essentially would be because obviously you got to get a group of 5 in there. So like Liberty would have been there. So right now, like the 11th team is Ole Miss and the 12th team is Oklahoma. Well, one of those teams wouldn't have obviously made it because you have to put Liberty in. And so from 9 to 12, you have Missouri, Penn State, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, all 10-2. Well, one of those teams wouldn't make it. So that would be like the only drama. And essentially, like, yeah, it'd be either Oklahoma or Ole Miss. So other than that, though, it's like you're getting the best teams. You're still getting Oregon. Like I still think Oregon's a good team. Just because they lost, like doesn't mean they're bad now. So
and again, at that point, those teams have lost some games. So it's less of an argument. Like there's less drama.
Yes.
There's less, you know what I'm
exactly.
saying? Like, compared to this year where you're leaving out an undefeated team, that would never happen in a 12-team playoff, like you were saying. So
also, as an Iowa fan, like anyone that doesn't want like an expanded playoff, like I don't understand because it's like for Iowa, for example, like, okay, you beat Michigan, which I'm not saying was going to happen, but like you win, you're in. Obviously, right now with only 4 teams, like even if you won that game, there's no chance you'd make it. So I love that because essentially at that point, like you could probably, and moving forward with this 12-team playoff, or if they expand more, you can afford to probably lose 2 games every year and still probably make it, especially if you win your conference, which is big. I mean, LSU this year was 9-3 and they were at 13th. Like they could, even a 3-loss team some years might make it to the playoffs. So,
and especially with how the Big Ten is going to look next year, yes, an expanded playoff is going to be necessary for a team like Iowa, right?
Exactly.
To try to get in. It's only getting harder. So,
yep. I just, God, the matchups this year, man, if we were at 12-team playoff would be absolutely freaking insane. It really makes me mad that like before this year, like why couldn't they have like figured something out where like it started this year? Because it would have been, I mean, but I do think moving forward with as much as the NIL transfer portal I like, but I do think there needs to be like a cap, like the NFL. There needs to be something because it is like it's honestly like wild west out there. There
needs to be guardrails around.
Yes, but at the same time, what I do like about the transfer portal and NILs and all that is it creates some parity in college football, and you're seeing that this year. I mean, for most years, the last decade, it was like the one team they were way too good, like good luck, and now it's like. If we had a 12-team playoff, I don't know who wins. Like, I really don't. Or even like this year with the 4 teams, like, I don't know who wins. I mean, it's wide open.
You can make an argument for any one of those teams, Collin. You really can.
Yeah. It could be Alabama, Washington. It could be Michigan, Texas. I don't know. I really don't know who wins. All I know is I think these games are going to be really freaking good.
Me too.
After dealing with Michigan fans this year, and in 2021, but especially this year, I don't really recall much of 2021. They were just, safe to say, I dislike Michigan fans. They were very annoying. They just thought they're
chirping you. Were they?
Shit. They think their shit don't stink. No, they're just not like I don't know. Like they were very annoying. They just think that they're like just so much better than anybody. Michigan first, everybody. They think everybody's out to get them. They're like I said, that story I told you about. When we were at that bar and the guy like just being a douche, like I don't know. It's just after witnessing and seeing all that, like as much as I want to see the Big Ten win, I am honestly hoping that Alabama smokes Michigan or at least beats them. And I would normally not say that. I would normally say like I want to see Michigan win, but I just after dealing with them all weekend in Indy, I really want to see that happen. So I don't know, but we'll see. I mean, technically speaking of Washington wins, hey, they're a new Big Ten team. So like, granted, they're still considered packed, but like you can make the case, well, like that's a Big Ten team because they are joining the Big Ten. Yeah. So I wouldn't mind seeing them win. I love Michael Penix. I think, he's a really good quarterback and it'd be cool to see them. I wouldn't mind Texas, honestly, either. So,
and I was just going to say, obviously with just kind of wrapped up the rest of the playoffs, like Texas obviously got in because you're not going to put Alabama in and not put Texas in.
Not
Texas
Texas.
beat Alabama week 2, head-to-head matchup, actually beat them by like double digits in Alabama, which like is almost impossible to do. If you look at the course of their Alabama's home games, it's like they never lose, let alone lose by double digits. So Texas for sure. I think like I said, the only question is Florida State, but can't change it now. Alabama's in, and man, I'm really looking forward to the playoffs.
And as an Florida State fan, if you're like looking back, I wish Georgia would have won. I still think they would have put Texas ahead of Florida State. I think just seeing Texas jump to 3, like I think 100%. Texas would have been in. It would have been like Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Texas, or something along those lines. So, but that will do it for this episode. Now, transfer portal started today. There's been a few transfers from Iowa. I'm not going to go through the list because I'm sure by the time this episode comes out, there'll probably be more. But we'll probably do an episode again, probably next week, because I would think by then we have a clear idea of who's on the transfer portal. I feel like by then maybe we already know maybe a couple players that we're getting. Hopefully, I don't know. I'm really hoping we can land a few. And then maybe by then too, we'll know if there's any guys that are going to stick around. Now, like I said, because there are a few guys that can stay. Sebastian Castro, Jay Higgins, Cooper DeJean. Now, I don't think it's going to happen with them, but maybe by then too, like some of those guys will either declare that they're leaving or going to say they're coming back. I don't know. I feel like for a lot of those guys, actually, they'll probably wait till the bowl game. They usually is what happens. They wait till after the bowl game. But I would feel like by next week, though, we should have a really good idea of what's going on in the whole transfer portal thing. So we'll probably have an episode out sometime next week, and then obviously at some point go over the Tennessee game. So, and as we are actually just pulling up Twitter, Iowa wide receiver Deontay Vines has entered the transfer portal. So there we go. Case in point,
I don't think that's overly shocking, right?
No, I kind of figured he was gonna go. So, so he's gone. Case in point, with what I'm saying, by the time this episode comes out, there's gonna be probably more. So it's not even worth me going over the transfer portal. We'll have an episode out next week to go over all that. But no, I know with Deontay Vines, like I'm not surprised at all by that. So. All right, man. Well, that will do it for this episode. Thank you guys all for listening. Until then, have a good rest of your week and go Hawks.